Today, I'm going to show you how to make this decadently rich pasta that is filled with the most perfectly caramelized mushrooms. It has a splash of white wine, heavy cream, and of course, lots of garlic confit. This is one of those recipes that I make when I don't particularly feel like cooking, but want to put something a little bit fancy on the dinner table. It's my creamy garlic and mushroom pasta. When making a mushroom dish, I always like to use a variety of mushrooms. There are so many different kinds of mushrooms out there, and they all bring with them their own taste, texture, and color, which is why I always like to mix it up. For this recipe today, I have chosen to use two different kinds of mushrooms. The first is the more common and popular variety, which is a Swiss brown, and the second, which happens to be my favorite, is shiitake. Swiss brown mushrooms are a smaller mushroom that have a very robust and earthy flavor. They have a lower water content, which is why they can be a little firmer in texture. I love to use Swiss brown in almost any of my mushroom dishes, but especially when I'm sauteing them, as they caramelize absolutely perfectly. They are also really easy to get your hands on, and you can find them in most markets or mainstream supermarkets. Shiitake mushrooms come from East Asia, and they have a meaty and chewy texture. When cooked, they tend to hold their shape and size and don't shrink up as much as a Swiss brown would. While a little harder to source and a little more pricey, they are totally worth it if you can find them. If not, you can always just use Swiss brown. And I know what you may be thinking, an Asian variety mushroom in a Mediterranean dish, but trust me on this, it does not matter and works so well. Using a sharp knife, slice the mushrooms into 1 inch or 3 centimeter strips. Next up in our prep work is the shallots. They have a delicate and sweet flavor that is much more mild when compared to onions. Onions can always be substituted with shallots, which I always prefer to use when cooking a cream or butter-based recipe. We want to finely dice these, and to do so, you need to firstly slice them in half. Cut the tip off and then work your finger under the papery skin to help peel it off. The important part to note here is that we leave the root intact, as this is going to help us in the next step as it holds the shallot together. Slice as many vertical slices as you can, as close to the root as possible. Follow this by cutting 3 horizontal slices towards the root and then dicing the shallot as fine as possible. If you need to give it a little dicing touch up to make it even finer, just do what I am doing here. Repeat this with the remaining shallot and toss the skins in a scrap bowl, something that I always like to keep on hand when prepping. Now let's talk garlic, my favorite topic to talk about. This recipe calls for 12 garlic confit cloves or 4 raw garlic cloves. You can use either or depending on your personal preference or time availability. Garlic confit is garlic that has been slow cooked in lots of olive oil until soft, jammy, and caramelized. It needs around 1 to 2 hours in the oven, which is why I always like to make a large batch and correctly store it in a large glass jar in my fridge. If you're new around here, I love to cook with garlic confit. I use it in almost every single one of my savory recipes, but I get that it can be a little time consuming to make. So, speaking practically here, if you don't happen to have a jar of garlic confit that you made a few days earlier, or don't have an hour or 2 to spare before making this pasta dish, you can always opt for raw garlic. It's not going to dramatically change the taste of the dish too much. If using raw garlic cloves, you can finely slice them or use a garlic press to mince them. If you want to use garlic confit, I always recommend doubling, if not tripling the amount, as the taste is very mild when compared to raw garlic. You will see that it's also very soft and will easily break down when tossed through the sauce. Mash it up with a spoon or the back of your knife and then set to the side. The last little bit that we need to do for our prep work is to finely dice some parsley. This will just bring a little brightness and freshness to a very rich and heavy dish. I'm doing this with a sharp knife and including the stems because who can be bothered to pick parsley leaves when it's not necessary? Set it to the side. The pasta I have chosen to use today is rigatoni. This is a large tubular pasta that has ridges along the sides to help catch the sauce. You can easily use any pasta you like, from a penne to pappardelle. Before we begin making the pasta sauce, bring a large pot of water to the boil. Grab a large handful of salt just like this and add it to the boiled water. The general rule of thumb is that for every 5 quarts or 4 liters of water, you need 1 to 2 tablespoons of fine sea salt. This will help flavor the pasta. Drop in half of the pasta packet, which is around 300 grams or 10 ounces, and cook al dente. I always drain my pasta 2 minutes before the suggested al dente time, as it will continue to cook when we toss it through the sauce. While the pasta cooks, let's get started on the sauce. Bring a large pan to the heat and then drizzle 1 tablespoon of olive oil into it once hot. If cooking with stainless steel, this is how you make the pan non-stick. Turn the heat to medium and then add 6 tablespoons or 90 grams of butter. I always like to do a combo of butter and olive oil as I find the olive oil prevents the butter from burning and it also adds a lovely flavor. Melt the butter and wait until it's foaming and has stopped sizzling, as that's how we know the water has been removed from the butter. This is also how we know our butter is hot enough to cook in, and we can cook it at a temperature of up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. Add the mushrooms to the pan, don't worry about overcrowding it, and resist the urge to stir them. We want to brown those mushrooms because browning equals flavor, and to do so we need to let them sit and get nice and brown and caramelized on the bottom. The mushrooms will also begin to shrink, which is the mushroom way of telling us that they are losing a lot of their water content. This is what we want when browning something, as water is not caramelization's friend. Once they are perfectly brown on the bottom, like this, they will need around 5 minutes on a medium heat. Give the mushrooms a stir or individually flip them over if you can be bothered. Cook for another 2 minutes. Once your mushrooms are the way we need them to be, let's add in those diced shallots and garlic confit. I'm also going to add in my 2 example garlic cloves that I sliced and minced up earlier. Saute with the mushrooms for 2 to 3 minutes or until they are fragrant and the shallots are turning slightly translucent. You'll notice that the garlic confit is distributing across the mushrooms, which means we are going to get a burst of garlic flavor in every bite. This is why I love cooking with garlic confit. You will also notice that the bottom of the pan has a lot of brown bits sticking to it, and this is actually called the fons. It's where so much of the flavor lives, so we want to get every last drop of it off the pan, and we do this by deglazing the pan with a liquid such as white wine. Add half a cup of white wine and then use a wooden spatula to scrape the bottom of the pan to remove all of the fons. Now it's a great time to season the sauce with salt and pepper. I purposely did not do this earlier as salt will remove moisture from the mushrooms and we don't want that to happen in the browning process. Bring to a rapid boil and reduce until 80% of the liquid has been absorbed. Now it's time to add the cream, which we need 1 cup of. Bring to a bubble and then turn the heat to low and allow the sauce to cook for 5 minutes or until it has slightly reduced and thickened. While this is happening, drain the pasta, making sure you reserve up to 1 cup of pasta water, aka liquid gold. This is what you need to get a glossy and silky pasta sauce that you would find at a high quality and authentic Italian restaurant. Once the sauce has reduced and thickened, turn the heat to low and add the pasta. Now for this next step, we want to do it in batches to allow the cheese and pasta water to fully emulsify with the sauce. Grate in half of the cheese, which is 25 grams of Parmesan or Pecorino Romano, and then add a splash of pasta water. Stir it through until glossy and silky, and then repeat with the remaining cheese and another splash of pasta water. You won't need a full cup of pasta water, but I always like to reserve a little more than needed just in case my sauce needs a little more liquid or if I have any leftovers and need to reheat the pasta the next day. Once this is done, sprinkle over the parsley and stir it through. Finish off with a little extra cheese. You'll notice just how gorgeous that pasta sauce is and how it's at that perfect consistency. Plate it up and serve immediately. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video or made this recipe at home, please let me know in the comments. I always love to hear from you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and I will catch you next week.